partners and new technology and other things or reusing technology. I think Pickle will be a great example of innovative solutions. So I will not take it away from him. Yeah, but I want to welcome Benedict to be here. And he's going to talk about preserving precious data over ages, at a very long time. Yeah, so storage, but then for a very long time. Yeah. So, okay, why?
You can do your question.
Okay, so the question is, you okay? Okay. So my question to you, Benedict, is why is it important to protect data for a very long time?
Oh yeah, so people are constantly working with the digital environment. We're talking, the most valuable information that institutions and companies have. Usually we say it's 5 to 10% of the information that we talked about today, and the information that's coming out from the IoT, so for the historical information, both from the public and private sector. So we believe that it's extremely important in the 30 to 50 to 70, sometimes even the 100-year perspective, that we're able to take care of that and document that. And I will talk more about that in the presentation.
So why is it difficult to preserve for a long time, more than 50 years, say?
So sitting with a book, sitting with analog information, this is something that we as human beings can perceive, we can understand with our human eyes. We can read that information if it's written in an understandable language. But when we talk about digital information, it's a completely different story. So it's great for dynamic information, for it's getting cheaper, it's getting faster, we can put in a lot of different services. But for keeping the information authentic for the long term, it really is a struggle because there's so many variables that makes it very complex.
So how can we take part of the joint platform?
So this is actually part of what I wanted to show in the presentation.
Okay,
so maybe I'll do that instead, and also hopefully I can inspire you to see if this make a position or a fit in your work, in the processes that you're involved in digitalization processes and working with data and data centers and so forth.
Okay, so I think the next question you will also answer that in your presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you saw the question, so hopefully you answer that at the end. We will come back to it. Yeah, but please, take a look. I think you rather talk fast.
Yeah.
So maybe slow down a little bit, because it's a very interesting topic. If you have questions, please raise if we need to translate something in Italian.
Right.
Yeah, but it's a new way of thinking how to preserve data in a digital way. And I think it's a very interesting story. And I hope I can share that knowledge with you. Yeah, so more meaningful connections.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Just a quick question.
Yes.
The video now, is that in
I think so. Let's check. Okay, yes. Solo un input aggiuntivo, arriva da Oslo, Bendik, quindi si è fatto 2000 km ero questa notte, so I just translate this as your trip here. Conferma chiaramente dell'importanza della dedizione e dell'interesse chiaramente nel trasferire questo tipo di informazioni. So, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. I apologize for my lack of Italian. I hope you can bear with me some English before the lunch. But yeah. So the idea is that we talked about a lot of different kind of core activities for Candid, how we make data, how we make new services, how it's kind of transferred through the network and through the data centers. Where I will talk about kind of the end of the life cycle, the end of the document life cycle, kind of what we do to keep it for, as I said, 30 to 50 to 70 years. So this will basically be the agenda, and I thought I would start with the why is it important to keep and protect data in the long term. So the picture you see is the VP of Google. His name is Win Sir, and he's been addressing this challenge that we call the digital dark age. So basically what's happening is that both the software and the hardware technology, the development of this is happening so fast, which is great for a lot of purposes. But as I mentioned, for the authenticity of the information, for that information that we really need to keep for the future generations, is really a challenge. So we see, for example, AutoCAD, which probably a lot of you know, is a very complex proprietary format. So there's a lot of examples when it's kind of going from one generation to another generation of AutoCAD that the information actually, it's really difficult to move it, to migrate it, as we call it, from one generation to another. And we are jeopardizing that information. We are risking that it gets lost. So we call that the digital memory is actually getting lost. So that's the initial thinking. Because how can we keep this and to really be able to protect this in the long term. I thought I would give you some cases for you to understand the type of applications. So health records, for example. Your own personal health records. This could be on paper. Now it's more and more digitized. The lifespan of this could be 70, 80, 90 years. There's a lot of regulations around it. Usually you would see 10 years after people cease away, after they die. Next year in Norway, we will actually build a completely new archive that is going to digitize every personal health record that's been created in Norway for the last 200 years. It's going to take them 30 years to digitize all the information. And then you can ask, why would they do that? Well, it's because of the next in kind, so people can come and see, learn about their former relatives. But it's also from the scientific point of view. So we're able to take that information and aggregate it, understand more about diseases, understand more about the population, and how we're changing over time. This is another example. We're currently working with American film studios. So, you know, the Mickey Mouse and the Donald Ducks, they made those films back in the 30s and the 40s. And they're still making money on that. So there's still a lot of commercial value to their assets, to their content. Because they're remastering them, they're putting on new services, they're publishing in different formats or new platforms. So for the studios to really be able to ensure that they have, you know, that core original copy of their content is extremely essential. So they have several copies of their masters, usually in different places as an insurance copy. And then we're talking forever. You know, we're talking 100 years perspective. Industry. So this is a shipper we're working with in Spain, talking about digital traceability, talking about blueprints of ships. So the ships, they're built to last for 60 years. What if there's an accident? What if something happens in the maintenance maybe 10 or 20 or 30 years ago that could explain why there was an accident today? So when we see there's investigations, for example, if a plane crashes, they will go back. There's a lot of requirements. There's a lot of scrutiny to really, you know, to keep people accountable for what's been done. And they go back and they look at the original information. How was it done? How was it built? So to really be able to document that in an authentic way, in 40, 50-year perspective, is also extremely crucial. And then, of course, cultural heritage. How do we tell the story of the world? How do we choose what to take care of? How do we, in the world of fake news, how do we know what is the story of our culture or our human beings? So the connection actually with Pandas started through our friends in the Vatican Library. So Pandas has done an amazing job of, you know, digitizing these old manuscripts of the Vatican Library and building this very impressive infrastructure and data center. So Pickle, of course, was interesting for the library because he saw that we can really help them preserve, take care of those digitized manuscripts. So last year we did the first pilot, which was the Divina Commedia from Dante Alighieri.
Bravo.
And in March we signed a larger agreement with the library, and then this summer we actually, in only a couple of weeks, we're going to start preserving, archiving their most valuable documents, their most valuable manuscripts, their most valuable information that they collected from around the world. So I thought that I would just show you a little video of the seeds that...
Give me just 1 second because I have to do another technical things.
If we have,
Yeah.
it's a nice video.
Yeah. Just stop with something here. It's going good. So there were the music in the background. Sorry for that. Can you check? Okay. It's okay.
Applauso tecnico di sala.
Anche quello.
Scusa.
Okay, sorry. Okay. Okay.
But it's not the right slide.
No, okay.
It's okay.
We will share it.
I'll be happy to show you the video after. It's basically Mr. Menti, the CIO of the Vatican Library, is talking about the challenges of digital preservation, of keeping that information for a long time. So the Vatican Library has an extremely broad and very, very deep competence about keeping this. They're keeping, they're having manuscripts that are 1,000 years old. And now they're able to digitize that to understand, to learn, and to know how to conserve it, but also to be able to show it to the public, to show it to the future generations. So just to summarize, kind of, even though there's not that much of the information that we're creating, the applications are actually quite broad. There's a lot of different unique, specialized use cases because the retention requirements are quite long. So you need to keep the information for 30, 50, 70, and sometimes for forever. Okay, so I thought I'd just talk a little bit more in depth why this is difficult. So as I mentioned, when we talk about digital information, bits and bytes, there's a lot of different variables that makes this difficult. It's the file format. So if you think yourself, if you have a Word document from 1970, a Word 2004, if you're trying to open that document on your computer today, it's a pretty big chance that you won't be able to see, because the computer is hasn't adapted to be able to read that version. So both the file formats, the software, like the reading software, to be able to understand this, the file systems, the operating systems to be able to understand, the file systems, and also the hardware, the hardware to be able to read from a medium. You have to keep all of this information alive, and it's very, very challenging. And it comes down to, really that interpretation of what are we writing, what are we putting down, what is the documentation. And when we can only see that as ones and zeros, for us human beings, it doesn't make sense. So this is why, traditionally, using cave paintings, using paper, using film has actually been a very clever way to keep information alive for a long time, because we can understand it. And that was kind of the background for when Pickle, the company, started looking into this challenge and trying to understand the problem, that these are all very, very robust mediums, very robust in the sense that they can store information for a very long time. So we started knowing a lot about film. And then we've been working now for the last 7-8 years to develop a data carrier. So it's a digital data carrier, kind of combining that analog world with the digital world. So what you see here is a frame with digital information. It's just like a very high resolution QR code, like a 2D QR code. So if you could really go down, you would see that there's bits and bytes in that frame. We can put any kind of information, databases, 3D models, pictures, it doesn't really matter because it's just a bit stream. But at the same time, we have the opportunity to put the visual information. And this is where we describe, what type of information is this? How can we keep it alive? What type of file formats has this been written in? What type of program can you use to actually be reading this format and understanding it in the future? We can even include, the source code. So we're using open source formats and tools, so we can even put the source code on the film. The idea is that, of course, you can retrieve this information using a machine, using a scanner, using kind of very standard technology that we have today. And we believe that this will be around also 30 and 50 years. But even if, if we're talking completely technology shift, if we're talking about, quantum computing, and the world is looking completely different, you would still be able, from that visual part, to understand what this is, and you will still be able to understand how you can regenerate the information. And this, of course, is important if we're talking about the cultural heritage of the world. If we're talking about, a lawsuit against a company that really needs to prove some blueprints that was created like 60 or 70 years ago. So that's the whole idea, is that we're basically putting in all the information on the data carrier as a self-contained solution. What I can do, I'll just show you quickly how it looks like. You just feel free to pass this around. So you will just see that there's a frame with digital information. There's also a frame kind of with the visual information. And then, of course, we need to protect this. We need to protect the medium. So we're storing it in a box like this. And this has been tested to be able to keep the information for many, many centuries, so for a really long time. As you see, this is an offline storage medium with the connectivity to online databases and infrastructure. Yeah, so as part of development, the EU has actually looked at this as a really a challenging task. And they now join us kind of co-investing in what we're doing in our mission because they really see the application and the challenges of this. So that's a nice testimony for us. Then I thought I would just show you quickly what this could mean to you, how could this easily be integrated. So if you're looking at kind of a traditional data infrastructure, a data center, system integrators, you're working with dynamic information, it's actually very simple. You just through an API, a very simple interface, you can send the information to Pickle, and then are kind of packaging, making it ready and prepared for to be put on this time capsule, on the digital time capsule. And then you can choose to either store it yourself in the client's facility as a system operator at a third-party storage facility, such as Iron Mountain, which is the largest company around the world. Or we also have an option that you can store it with Pickle in something called the Arctic World Archive, which I will just quickly tell you about at the end. But the whole idea is that so we're keeping the information here kind of offline, safe, very robust, very simple. But at the same time, of course, you can have that information online, either in a dynamic copy that you can host in the data center or host with your client's facility. So the only time you really need to go back to this ultimate secure master copy is for those specific purposes. When there is a debate about if this other copy is really original or authentic, or if there's something happened with the versions and they really need to go back. So that's when you can rely on that ultimate backup. And then as part of also developing this, we needed to make sure that we could control the whole infrastructure. So this is how a Pickle production facility looks like. So we have the Pickle writer, which is taking that digital information and putting it on that medium that I showed you. So we have some verification, and then we have the Pickle reader, which is the one kind of verifying all the information after it's put on the medium, but this is also the way that it can be read back. So this is an efficient way to read this back very quickly. And we're also working with other manufacturers around the world to make kind of white label readers, so it's more attainable. So this is what the company's been working on now for the last 6-7 years. We currently have 3 production facilities around the world, 2 in Europe and 1 in the Americas. And this is where you can send the information to produce it and put it on a time capsule like this. Yeah, so we are a Norwegian-based company with a headquarters just outside of the capital of Oslo. And then as you see, we have a worldwide presence. So we're working with a global network of sales partners. Of course, we understand that for us to really be able, to enable clients and institutions that need this, we cannot only talk about archiving. We need to talk about the whole life cycle of documentation of the information. And that's why it's very interesting for us to be part of, an understanding and talking with Pandit and the partners, because it kind of lessens the complexity. And all the institutions we're talking to, they would like to have end-to-end solutions. They would not have that challenge of moving information from system to system and having the silos. So I also want to just spend a little bit of time on this. This is a very interesting initiative that we started last year. So it's called the Arctic World Archive. So if you see all the way up here, where it's cold and dark, like Norwegians like, I guess not the place for Italians to go, but very special place. It's an island, completely secluded, with a lot of polar bears. It's a demilitarized zone, so there's no military activity. All the big superpowers have signed an agreement, and Norway has the sovereignty up there. So we are supported by the Norwegian government to actually store these in a world archive. So we store it in a mine up there as an option, as a potential to kind of have a second copy or to really take care of the information in a physically very secure place. So we opened this last year. We now have deposits from more than 20 different institutions, constitutions, independence of declaration, art from some of the most famous artists in the world. We also did a very nice footage from ProSieben, one of the largest TV houses in Germany. They actually made a 15-minute piece on that whole journey, taking one of their oldest pieces, one of their older program, and bringing it up to the article archive. So I'll be happy also to share with you that in the session afterwards if you would like to see. This is what we did last year. We kind of started at the first initiative, and now we're working on the second generation. And so we're going to bring it even more into the mines. We're going to make it even more secure, being able to take more information and more secure data. And this is kind of the target for our second half of the year. And of course, then it's also very interesting for us to be able to leverage the competence and expertise of Conduit, using sensors and really be able to control the temperature, the oxygen, and so forth. Because this is a complex environment, it's extremely good to keep film like this in this kind of cold, very dry environment. But it would also be very good for us to show institutions and clients around the world, they can go in and see, okay, this is kept in a very stable condition using the sensors and the monitors from the Conduit. So I wanted to kind of end with proposing that this could be a value-adding service. This is something that you could include in your digitalization processes and in the kind of documentation that you're working with. It requires very little maintenance. It can provide a recurring storage cost, and really ensures that compliance, the security, and that future access of the most valuable information that institutions will have. As I said, it's a very easy implementation to one of our existing production centers. You can, of course, also set up another production center if that is needed, if the clients want to kind of keep it themselves and have control themselves. And we are interested in working with specialized partners who kind of see these niche potential clients or needs that really have that long-term thinking, that really understands the challenge of not being able to document and showcase their information in 25 years or 50 years and so forth. So I think I will just leave you with that. I know we're a little bit over time. Thank you very much for the time. I hope it was just a little bit of a spark. I'll be happy to talk to you more after the break. And thank you very much for having me.
Because I want to grab you a little bit. Because we started to meet each other at the Vatican Library. After that, we had several meetings where we see that customers are really are getting the picture about this. There's a lot of threats for customers like libraries, governments, lawyer firms, banks. In data center, we all know in digital, there's different threats. You can have in war an EMP. So you lose all your data. Sometimes when you have a card close to your phone, it doesn't work on the hotel anymore. It can happen in every digital environment. So they can lose a very precious data because it's all digitalized. When it's on film, you cannot tamper it, you cannot lose it, it's always there. So they can retrieve that data. If there's a fire, and that's one of the things that the Vatican was very interested in. They had some kind of fire somewhere and they lost some precious books. We cannot prevent a fire from happening, but then we can make sure that at least that we have a good copy somewhere of all that precious data that we have. So we see now we have international, like we're talking to Russian library now and the Russian government, where they're really interested to store data on a longer term, in their terms, their environments, but still to be able to perceive that data. So for me, it's just, when we go to big customers that we know that have very precious data, it's a good story to tell, it's a good door opener. And then they see you as a different way, how you communicate with them. You try to think with them, how to help them to be secure towards the future. And that's what I like, we only have just one connection to their system, which is the network cable, and that's it. But I think the whole story behind it and what we're trying to do to connect everything together, this is the final piece. How can I preserve something for a very long time for disasters? And film, I think we found boats on the ocean where films were there, and you can still retrieve those films. You can still watch them. You can hold them against the light and see what's going on. And I think that's a very innovative solution for me on this kind of things.
No, definitely. So it's really, a differentiator to the offering for the long term.
It's a new way of thinking, and I like it. So thank you very much. Is the video now?
Yeah, that was really planned.
Technical guy was trying to get the video on.
Second hour.
resolution looks a bit.
Is it going through the internet?
No?
You spend a lot of money for the guarantee that your product will be visible in the next 200, 300, 300 years. So our dream is converting things together people and give this information and for the future, for the next generation. And we know we have appreciated that the technology by people is consistent. Because we're living in one world where everything is faster, but don't during for a long time. People has the technology and the philosophy for to transfer the information and the culture to the future. At the Vatican, want to realize this dream with the technology by people is possible to conserve 500 years of the documentation. It's a very important format because it's an open source created 52 years ago. And then it's right in binary. Technology by people, we have a guarantee in any case that our job will be reading only also in an analogic way with the lamp and not anymore. This is one very important thing for who invests a lot of money in this project. We give a proof of concept with the people. They give it to the people company, the Divina Commedia by Dante Alighieri. This is real, will be inside to your deposit in art. This is an example. We want to be the people that think of the next generation, not only today. And the example of the Arctic solution is drastic, because it led to me image that something is happening on our planet. But I have realized that maybe someone pressed the photon button, something will be changed on our planet. This is better that someone you can have, which wonderful type of the people it was before in this planet.
Thank you very much.